Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. Last time we ran some intel missions. Didn't get anything major, but managed to get through them, which is the important part. And this time we're going to run some Ordo missions again. Yeah, seriously, I had said before when I was running Ordo Malleus, they really want me to knock this stuff out. Which admittedly is fine, I can use the damage against all demons. Would like to do... Yeah, Xenos would probably be the best. You know what, let's make some progress on Ordo Xenos. I don't do enough for them. Reflect damage... Yeah, that's all workable. Let's tweak this. Yeah, that works.
Between the stars, the ancient unseen enemies of mankind wait and hunger. Be strong and give them no quarter.
Remember how I said before that because of my recording schedule, I always record, and if there's nothing to talk about, I can almost guarantee during that time right after something will happen? I was right again. Because right after I finished recording, actually it was, I think last week? Honestly, it was last week now. Wizards and Hasbro decided to step in it again and announce changes for the OGL, the Open Game License. If you don't know what that is or haven't really heard about it, it's the license that essentially says, hey, the D&D framework, the D20 system, anyone can use it. You just have to put, like, hey, we use the D20 system, here's a little legal blurb made by Wizards of the Coast, blah blah blah, somewhere in the book. Not a big deal. You can crack open a lot of books, like anything made by Paizo for Pathfinder and Starfinder, and find that in there. Well, Wizards and Hasbro were like, hey, and this is what the person in charge said, and I quote, D&D is under monetized. And I was just, the second I heard that, I was like, oh, that's not good. And then they announced the changes, which they've been rolling them back a little, but they're not gonna fully roll them back. What they want is essentially, if you're a creator, whether you make third-party supplements, or to a degree, from what I understand, even YouTube stuff, like Critical Role does streams, if you make a certain amount of money, you have to then pay royalties for using the system. Which already is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because it gets worse. But we'll go with that initially. The ruling is that if you make, I think it was originally 750,000, they rolled it back to 700,000, and I think it's sitting now at a case-by-case basis? I'm not 100% sure, I just know it's still asinine. But you have to send your pay, like your pay stubs, to Wizards and show them what you're making, and then you have to pay them like 20 to 25% royalties. Which is incredibly stupid. And part of their reasoning was, oh, well, people make a bunch of money kickstarting stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because that's to cover, in most cases, the upfront costs of creating and making books. I get it's a lot cheaper when you have just PDFs, because then you're not having to print a physical copy. But that's not always how it goes. So they have that, and then the absolute mega minds that Wizards are, they decided to also throw in that you, by agreeing to the licensing, you give Wizards of the Coast perpetual, worldwide, irrevocable rights to everything you make, and they can reprint any of your works without compensation. So if you make... Let's just say you make a sci-fi setting. Okay, you made a sci-fi setting. You made a book, like a player's handbook, a monster manual, and that's about it for right now. Wizards can go, hey, that's some nice shit. It's ours now. And they can print it all and not pay you a dime. And that is the most laughable and insane clause I've ever seen in my life. That is, in my eyes, that is the equivalent of someone being like, hey, can I borrow $5 for lunch? And you going, yeah, you can have $5. Pay me back. And by the way, I can rent out your ass anytime I want for perpetuity now. And you agreeing to it. Just flat out. I'm just like, yep, you're mine now. By agreeing to this deal for $5, you are now literally an indentured servant. And that's the path that Wizards is looking to take. And I love it because people have pushed back hard. The pushback is insane. Everyone and their mother is just dogging Wizards, and they deserve it. They deserve every ounce of shit they get. Because it's stupid. And it kills me, because I've said it before, I've played D&D for well over 15 years. And I started with 3.5, and I've been playing with one of my best friends this entire time. Whether he's DMing, whether one of our friends is DMing, I DM for like Star Wars stuff in sci-fi settings, because that's where I really kind of fall into my own. But we've been doing this for years. And I've kind of been working on a little setting on the side that I wanted to do. It's coming together slowly because I get distracted and just spend hours doing lore. But I'm doing stuff. And to have Wizards just roll out and be like, yeah, no, we'll just reprint your stuff and not pay you if we really like it. It's kind of like Blizzard actually did a similar thing with... What was it? It was with the custom modes for StarCraft. Because they had, Dota, Defense of the Ancients, actually came from, I believe, Warcraft 3. And Blizzard didn't catch on. The people who made it said, we're going to go make our own game. Dota 2 came out. So Blizzard was like, well, we can't do that. We can't let people make shit and then leave. So they made a rule within the create a scenario stuff that anything you make belongs to them. And that's the same path that Wizards is taking, and it's stupid. It is demonstrably stupid. But they have this whole thing of, oh, well, it's under-monetized. The person in charge came from Microsoft. It came from specifically the Xbox division, which, I don't know, I wouldn't be hiring anybody from the Xbox division of Microsoft. Considering their history with games, they haven't exactly had many bangers in the past 10 years. But so this argument of, oh, it's under-monetized. I'd argue no, not in the slightest. Because, first off, certain things are over-monetized. Tarrasque miniature? Neat. $450 worth of neat? No, I'm afraid not. I'm not paying $400 for this miniature. Realistically, if I wanted to, I got a buddy who does a lot of 3D printing. If I could find the files for it, I could have him print me an equally large, if not larger, Tarrasque. And it would cost me maybe... Let's be generous. Let's say it will cost me $200. Probably not, because it's just gonna be the plastic and shipping. And then everything else, I can paint it. It's not gonna look the greatest, but realistically it's not impossible to paint. And that's it. I can get this done way cheaper. Why would I pay $400? Oh, because it's sitting right there? How many times am I going to use a Tarrasque? Those aren't exactly a common monster. But there's that. I remember getting the miniatures years ago, and it was a lot better deals, and the blind boxes were a lot better. I always remember, I think it was War of the Dragon Queen, you could get a mini Tiamat. I think it was like a huge sized Avatar Tiamat. You could get a Avatar of Bahamut. They were cool. But that stuff was pretty well monetized. It was like $20 for the big boxes. For the smaller, that would have like larger, smaller minis, it was 10-ish, I want to say. I don't remember. It's been a long time since they pulled that kind of stuff. But those miniatures also had a miniature game, which they had the miniatures handbook, and then they never supported past that, and then abandoned it. That'd be an option. Quick lightning round mulch here. Boom, easy. And no cards for this one.
Worlds, 100,000 wars. There is no respite. There is nowhere to hide. Across the galaxy, there is only war.
I did not read the things. Am I moving slow? Because I feel like I am just dragging my nuts. But back to the under-monetization. Absolute BS excuse. But so, the miniatures, they could honestly revive those. They could revive D20 Star Wars, or Star Wars Saga Edition, whichever you prefer. I preferred Saga, but D20 worked as well, because that's effectively what old Knights of the Old Republic was. But they could revive that. Disney's not exactly doing too hot. I think they would take a licensing deal, and they can make a ton of books, and it'd be great. But no, they can't do that. They can't revive D20 Past, they can't revive D20 Modern, Urban Arcana, any of that, which would also be more settings, more stuff people would buy. They could also revive old books. Yeah, you're gonna get people who complain, oh, why am I rebuying? Well, first off, you'd be dumb as sand to just copy-paste everything from 3.0 and 3.5 books and update the stat blocks. I would be mad. I think that'd be incredibly stupid. You need to expand and improve. But Wizards, if they want to, could bring back old books. Libris Mortis, the Book of Undead, my favorite 3.5 book. They could bring that back. Heroes of Horror, they could bring back Sandstorm, Frostburn, and Stormrack, which were setting books for fighting in deserts, like high seas and tundras, or Arctic areas. They could do any of the Eberron and Forgotten Realms books. Some of my favorite books are the Forgotten Realms ones, because they have... One of them was like a Lost Empires. That was really cool, and it was like, oh, hey, deep in these forests, there's this pyramid, and then they have a breakdown of what's inside of it. And they had all this cool stuff. They could bring back... God, it is countless things. Because all the old books are... You can't get them anymore. You buy them secondhand, or you have to find a PDF. these books are not easy to get your hands on. So why not reprint them? Add new stuff, improve them. Same with the old monster manuals. There's a lot of stuff from like Monster Manual 2 for 3.0 that was pretty good and could get a revive. Fiend Folio. One of my other favorites, actually two of my favorites, Exemplars of Evil and Elder Evils. Elder Evils was a phenomenal book and should have gotten, honestly, a second or third book to go with it. Because what it was a book where it was big bads. It was a book full of end bosses, and then it would have a series of different things leading up to them. Like, there was Father Limmick, who is this weird abomination, and it was like, throughout the campaign, signs of his approach would be getting stronger. The weather would start getting colder. Fire spells would get weaker. Ice spells would get stronger. These, like, frost-morphed enemies would start showing up more and more. And they would give you, like, the stat blocks and a little background on a couple of his minions. And then you would have the final confrontation. They'd have a map and everything. And so you could build a campaign around it. They had Ragnora, a favorite of mine. It was this creature that would actually cause essentially fecundity. Everything would start birthing faster. Animals would mature faster and get fatter. Crops would grow overnight. Positive energy would permeate the world. Your healing spells would be far greater, and necromancy spells would get weaker. But it eventually would go out of hand. Your floorboards would burst and tons of insects would come spewing out. People would develop pustules from just growth, and you'd have to essentially take damage, because if you got to overhealing to double your max HP, you'd explode. And one of the things was sentient undead would start attacking, trying to restrict all this, because unintelligent undead would actually start dying and getting destroyed. It was such an interesting boss, because they crash onto the planet in like a meteor. There was that. There was Atropus, where he's this effectively a god of undead, or like an avatar of undead. And as this moon would get closer, necromancy would get stronger, undead would start appearing more. Eventually, spontaneously, the dead would rise. And then as it gets closer, you realize it's not a moon, it's his severed head floating towards this planet to cause a massive undead apocalypse. And there's more creatures in there. They had, I think, the worm that walks. So, Caius, whatever it is. It's either him or someone similar within his wheelhouse, which you could use for Age of Worms. But these were amazing enemies. And Exemplars of Evil was just, hey, here's how to make good villains. Phenomenal books. They could revive Dungeonscape, which was how to build dungeons. Cityscape, building cities. There's so many options, and they're good books. I would see, for people who are in 5e, if they can find a PDF, I would suggest these books to them, because they are so good, and they are such good tools for DMs. But instead of making that stuff, which would be useful, Wizards is taking the worst option and trying to squeeze blood from a stone. Yeah, it takes a while to make these books, but they need books. Paizo and Pathfinder are absolutely just stomping Wizards in adventure paths and in campaigns. There are so many for Pathfinder, but there's only a handful for Wizards. Once again, revive old ones. I think it's Sea of Dread. That's an old one my friend had played. Because that initially came out in I think the Dragon magazine. They could reprint that. They could reprint Age of Worms, which is a favorite of mine. There's a lot they could do, and they're just kind of dragging their feet. Instead, they do stuff like, oh, we did a crossover with Magic the Gathering, and it's like a 80-page splat book. I don't even think it's 80 pages on what it's like in Zendikar or Innistrad. I'm like, no, if you're gonna do this, do a full 200 to 300, maybe even 400 page book. Have the stat blocks. Especially with Magic, you have monsters. What does a basic scab, the Frankenstein's monster, what's their stat block? What is all of like Imrakul and all these eldritch monsters? What are their stat blocks? Instead, it's this very feeble, like, oh yeah, here's like 2 things, guys, enjoy. No. Either do the job fully or don't do the job at all. And Wizards is just, they're flopping hard. And it annoys me because I love D&D. It has been a great way for my friends to hang out, for all of us to just goof around and have fun. And during COVID, that was a way we could all hang out. During the lockdowns, we could just hop on Roll20 and play D&D. And the way it's going, I don't know if I'm going to be playing D&D in the future. I'll switch to whatever Paizo's doing, because that's the other beautiful part. Kobold Press, who made some of the earliest campaign stuff for 5e, so Wizards hired them, has announced they're doing their own rule set to break away from the OGL. Paizo said, oh yeah, we're going to do our own now. So they're going to break away from the OGL. So the influence that Wizards had by having their name in every book is going to go away. They have cut their nose off to spite their face in such a horrendous manner, it is actually hilarious. And they entirely deserve it. They done goofed to cataclysmic levels. Let's do another one. I'm in the mood. Yeah, Ordo Hereticus.
Maim the heretic, slay the treacherous Xenos, banish the fork-tongued demon spawn.
The other thing that's just kind of amusing to me with all this is the only reason Wizards is even stopping for a second, because they're stalling on their OGL, isn't because of all the backlash. It's because players started canceling subscriptions they had to, like, I think it's D&D Beyond, the website that originally was a third-party website they bought and now have kind of pile-driven into the ground. And people are like, oh, we won. No, you didn't win. They're going to stall and hope that people forget, that other things get in the way, and then people will just kind of, oh yeah, I should play D&D, and forget and come back. People have to keep it up. Keep reminding them, this is what's going to happen. Our hobby is going to die. And yeah, it's gonna suck, but these higher-ups, these corpo types gotta learn somehow. And if that's the way they learn is through losing their ass in the marketplace, bye-bye butt meat. That ass gotta go. And it just kills me, because first off, this stuff leaked, which, you know, leaks happen. But it is the funniest thing that it leaks, and this is what they're trying to utilize. And guess what's coming out around the corner? The D&D movie. What else is coming out? well, they're trying to announce their next edition, whether it's 5.5 or 6E, whatever they want to call it. I would consider it 5.5, considering 5E stuff is supposed to be backwards compatible with it. But that's coming out. Paramount announced a D&D show. Huh. I wouldn't have tried some shiesty shit like this when everything around me right now is really relying on a positive press. Because they just did, like, public image seppuku, and there is nothing that will revive them from this or recover from this. It is far too much damage. And I've seen people start demanding that the people in charge get removed. And if I was a shareholder, I would ask for that too. And it kills me because I could easily come up with a solution that would get them more money. You know, these ways I've mentioned, which took me all of 5 minutes to come up with. And here's the other one that I think would be worthwhile. Instead of trying to twist everybody's arm, partner. If I was Wizards of the Coast and I saw, oh, Kobold Press wants to make some books, what I'd do is I'd say, okay, wow, that sucked instantly. But I would say, okay, here's the deal. We will sell your book, or books, or whatever, and it will be on our marketplaces, so our websites, and we will even push them to stores in exchange for a percentage. Call it the D&D partner program, the creator program, whatever you want to call it. This way, they still get money off every sale. They leverage their name, their clout a bit. But in the end, they get the money. Oh, really? It's the guy who can magically cause me to get exploded.
Cleanse me of my sins.
Yeah, he's dead. Problem solved. But it just floors me because this is such an easy thing for anyone with even an ounce of business acumen to go, hey, we can make this mutually beneficial and retain our influence in the market. Because that's a big thing. They care about the influence as much as the money. And they could do this and, to a degree, start cutting out some of the the Kickstarter attempts, because a lot of people make a good money off Kickstarter. There have been projects that make hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million. So why not have those people say, hey, Wizards, can you help us? Wizards goes, oh, hey, yeah, we will front you some of the money. We'll take a percentage of the sales. This way they kind of become a publisher. Yes, it is a little bit more work, but then they get a lot more control with a lot less backlash. And they can be discerning. They can say, oh, we like this guy's work, we will have him, or we'll work with his products. The other people who are trying to muscle into the market at that point are now having to fight the equal-sized competitors and all the might of Wizards. So they would be able to have probably a stronger chokehold on the industry, which in turn would likely result in Paizo trying to attempt the same thing, which isn't bad. Additional resources for these books and these modes and games would go a long way for a lot of people. Will individual creators still exist? Yes. Is that bad? No. But Wizards being Wizards, just bumbling through life, driving down their market share. I actually have to check, because when this all came out, I had looked at their stock value and it had been up, but I can't imagine after a few days of this, their stock value's sitting pretty. Because if I was a stockholder, either I would be trying to cut and run because you can see the writing on the wall, or I would be demanding a lot of answers. But that's the problem too, is as much as I do gripe about like developers having to answer to shareholders, there's a difference between shareholders being like, why aren't you making me more money? And why are you making incredibly stupid decisions? Making a game that sells okay isn't something to have a problem with. Doing things that kill the public perception of your company, that's an issue. That was a nice explosion. But at the end of the day, we just gotta wait and see and wonder how this blunder is gonna pan out. My guess is they'll keep going with the OGL. They're too arrogant, too stupid, too unwilling to change. The people in charge are not D&D players. This isn't the days of 3.5, 3.0 with Monty Cook. You don't have guys who care. You have corpos. You have suits. Suits care about bottom lines. They don't care about communities and actual brand loyalty. Because a lot of the new people who got in from Stranger Things play maybe 1-2 matches or sessions, get to level 3 on average based on a lot of statistics from the D&D apps, and then leave. Guys like me will spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on books. We will stick around for years buying multiple editions. There's a difference. And it's this trying to think of how to pronounce this. Parasitization? Parasitizing? Parasites of a community or a hobby. We see this with a lot of stuff now. You probably can think of a few IPs yourself where they throw their community under the bus, get appeal for, like, they get a bit of mainstream appeal from your average players, viewers, whatever. Then the average viewers, players, whatever, get bored, leave, and then the company loses itself because they have no money. They threw their main player base under the bus. The main player base, or viewer base, is not happy. And they don't fully come back. They usually go to alternatives. And things go south. Prime example of this, to a degree it's still around, is WoW. Everybody remembers when Asmongold left WoW and went to Final Fantasy XIV, and Final Fantasy XIV had such a massive player bump that their servers couldn't hold everyone, and they had to stop selling copies of the game for a bit.
But you can certainly fight Inquisitor.
That into itself is very impressive. And it shows, if you don't adapt, you don't improve, you throw your main player base under the bus,
Once again, the enemies
people
of
will
the
leave.
Imperium failed miserably.
People will find alternatives. And the fact that with D&D we have Paizo and Kobold Press being like, nah, we're just gonna go our own way. If I was Wizards, I'd be scared. Because your biggest competitor is gonna be even more of a competitor, and the people who you hired and are well known for third-party stuff are now deciding to carve their own path. I just remember this. Kobold Press, Chaosium, I think Green Ronin, all are going to work with Paizo. I remember seeing that. And considering I have some Green Ronin stuff, I have some Cobalt Press stuff, I love Cobalt Press's work, I'm just sitting here like, oh, you screwed up so bad. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Alright, and that is all for now. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the like button, it helps out the channel a lot, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.